Afternoon, evening to everyone watching. You are tuned into the ConvergX panel session on FIA Connect. My name is Kimberley Van Vliet, founder and CEO of WaVv and ConvergX. WaVv is a strategic consulting company transferring commercialized technology from one industry and implementing it to another. Industries we focus on are aerospace, defense, security, energy, mining, tech, and military. ConvergX is the first and only annual 2.5-day global conference that creates cross-sector investment and business development opportunities in those sectors. It's in its 6th year now, has events in Canada, the UK, United States, and Peru. ConvergX gives you access to key decision makers, pre-qualified and vetted delegates with the authority to make decisions in this collaborative environment. Our host and moderator today is Mr. Brad Robson. Brad's expertise is delivering innovative solutions from diverse ideas. As president and CEO of WaVv and ConvergX, he works with global companies and innovative emerging small and medium businesses to create profitable and purposeful commercial opportunities. Serving in an executive leadership position for global technology companies such as GE, HP, and CGI has provided for a strong understanding in the areas of cybersecurity, intelligence, government relations, energy, defense, and technology innovation. Thank you, Brad, and thank you all joining us. The floor is now yours, Mr. Robson.
Great, thanks, Kim. Appreciate the introduction. And I'd like to also thank the panelists who are joining us today. And I look forward to having this conversation around technology innovation, specifically around autonomous operations. We've chosen the Arctic as an area of focus simply because there's a variety of opportunities that exist there from a geographic challenging area, harsh environment, disparate and remote communities, and then also the relationship within the Arctic to the countries that trade and commerce through that area, transit through the Northwest Passage, as well as the industries that themselves are as important in that region as well, to also the military presence of our allies and nations that are allies with Canada. So without further ado, I'd like to provide an opportunity for our distinguished panel to introduce themselves. And I will start on the right here with Zubin Kothawala. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and your company, Zubin.
Thank you, Brad. My name is Zubin Kothawala. I'm the CEO founder of Skymount Drones, the Satcom Inc. We're predominantly a aerial unmanned systems company where we develop different products for industry. We also have a retail side of us, but I'll focus right now on our industrial side. We provide solutions to industry, whether it's on land, underwater, or in the air, where we provide solutions to integrate various sensors, being able to just replace aircraft or to go where they haven't been able to go before. And we also have an artificial intelligence end for autonomous flight. We're building an air traffic control system for a autonomous delivery system, which is something that could be quite effective in the Arctic. We're building a early warning wildfire system, again, using drones, combination of satellite and drones. And lastly, we're doing a autonomous flight pipeline inspection system. So those are our 3 main projects that we're working on right now. Skymount Drones is currently based in Canada. We're opening offices throughout the US as well, with plans to go to the UK as our next location in about 1.5 years.
Thanks, Zubin. Jason, I'll turn to you.
Oh, well, hello, everyone. I'm Jason Reid. I work for Serco Canada Marine, primarily on their kind of winning business and strategy side of the business, but I'm also part of the Serco's global maritime leadership team. In Canada, we design warships for the Canadian government with our shipyard partner Seaspan, but we also work throughout North America internationally helping out with icebreaker design, warship design, commercial vessel design. As part of the global leadership team, Serco writ large, when we're across 4 continents now, we're looking at the underwater surveillance piece in the far north, in the Arctic, and looking at bringing technology to bear on monitoring certain sea lines of communication which are of interest to our customers. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Jason. Ryan?
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ryan Sutton. I work for Verve Industrial Protection. We're based out of Chicago, Illinois, but I'm based here in Canada. Verve specializes in OT endpoint management. So in the security space, we have to update all these endpoints going forward, both on a security aspect, and we also have to do it. We specialize in mining and power utilities. So we do have current customers in the Arctic. We're in the Arctic region today in the mining space, and we've been looking after them for a IT or OT security perspective.
Oh, great, thanks, Ryan. What's exciting about this conversation today for me is being able to put some definition around what autonomous means. We hear a lot about remote piloted aircraft. We hear about submersibles. Some submersible drones have been used to find some very historical things like the HMS Terror, and also for mapping the ocean floor, et cetera, all the way through to space, unmanned flight, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that I'd like to pose to each of you is perhaps maybe provide a definition of what you know and what you see from your point of view of what autonomous or remote piloted vehicles are, and why is it important? And we'll just continue on with reverse orders. Ryan, would you take that question first, please?
Yeah, so a lot of the topic revolves around health and safety, but the other aspect is efficiency and automation, and the scheduling within the North is, or in general for most of these organizations, is quite important. So adhering to a schedule that in this maintenance window for automation of the whole aspect of that business. So from my point of view, it's automation, health and safety would be the two.
Jason, the same question to you, but your point of view is going to be quite unique, being marine based, and your past experience as a serving member. What is autonomous to you and your company? But more importantly, how would it have benefited you as a serving member?
Interesting question. So our focus really in the autonomous world is operating in the far north in a very dangerous, dull environment, but being able to put sensors under the water where targets of interest may be. So what we can see in terms of for us at WaVv gives us the opportunity to put sensors far north that you wouldn't otherwise be able to, because we have unique challenges in that environment. And autonomy allows us to put sensors, hundreds, thousands of kilometers near contacts of interest. So for us, the UUV is a force multiplier to our customers, because if you have 3 or 4 UUVs on a vessel, you can then cover a much larger area than you otherwise would be able to. So we can deploy a UUV from a mother vessel, configured in a certain way with a certain sensor package on it, and then send it out to explore near the ice and even under the ice. And if you have an appropriate set of communications, you can then cue your UUV onto a contact or onto a situation that you may want to understand. What autonomy allows us to do is actually then deliver that in a persistent way, because you can have a rolling program of UUVs going out, coming back to the mothership, refueling them, data downloads if you haven't got constant communications, but it really presents a great opportunity for delivering that surveillance piece. And as a retired submariner, I know that if we had this kind of capability on a single platform, it would have presented us an opportunity to cover an awful lot of geography from a single platform or a couple of platforms. there are a number of challenges which we can talk about later about how we can actually deliver that, because the technology at the moment isn't as mature as we'd like it to be.
Thank you, Jason. Zubin, same question to you, but I'd like to add that your company has flown missions for safety, security, and for measurement and maintenance as well too. Your point of view regarding autonomous or remote piloted opportunities, can you again just provide some insight on what it means for you and your clients, and what kind of why is it important? Why is it important to your clients?
Well, actually, I'm currently working on a project with a company called Arctic WaVv. So it's very close to this. And currently we're flying non-autonomous, but we're manned. We are going beyond line of sight because we have some licensing. We're doing a mapping project where we have to look at mapping the Arctic ecosystem. As the ice caps melt, we're going to see the real land. And we can't do that from the air because currently we're seeing ice, we're seeing snow. So therefore, we're starting to employ underwater autonomous vehicles. Now, when we say autonomous, it's not just going to go on its own. It has to have decision-making capability to understand, to go long distances on its own. Otherwise, you have to wire a system underwater, which is this doesn't work because you can't run a wire that far. So what we're doing right now is we're building a back end out of using our artificial intelligence to be able to decision make. Now, the person that designed this AI also validated the Mars rover software before launch. And so this is a kind of a long range sensor that we're putting under the water just to run underwater mapping. And I think that's one of our number one thing, because that's what we're working on. And we're seeing that's probably a very important use of autonomous vehicles under the water.
Thank you, Zubin. Kim, even though you announced the panel and introduced us, I'm going to ask a question of you as well too. With the experience that you've had with WaVv and ConvergX being the summit and the Congress that brings these pieces of information together, and the delivery that WaVv does with its clients, how important is removing and providing an environment for people to not be in a dull, dangerous situation, or perhaps improve and enhance industry?
It's extremely important. We're seeing more and more in a variety of different industries the change from manned, I guess you could say, vehicles from all forms into unmanned to deal with those dangerous either environments or situations. So everything from military to mining to energy, aerospace and defense, they're all going into autonomous, including as we're starting to see more commercial aviation is also trying to head that way.
Thanks, Kim. Jason, you talk a lot about sensors, and to me, as soon as I hear the word sensors, that means a point of collecting data. And it's not just a little bit of data, it's a tremendous amount of data. So when you were discussing placing multiple sensors in far distances away, the ability to control where that sensor is, receive that information, and then do something with it. Can you explain a little bit how you envision managing this input that is now multiplied?
Well, I'll try and summarize a number of problems. I think Zubin was on the money actually there, talking about how do you actually talk to your autonomous sensor, and then how do you get your autonomous sensor to do what you want it to do? In my in our challenge, in the Serco challenge, I characterize it as knowledge is the capacity for effective action. But in order to have knowledge, you have to have information. And then you take that information, you pass it into knowledge, and then you take effective action. And that's what Serco wants to do in this space, is enable its customers to take effective action. The problem we've got, though, is you've got a sensor that might be 1,500 kilometers away. So how then do you collect the information? So you get the information on board your UUV, and then how do you get it off? I like to characterize the problem in 4 or 5 ways. The security, because the information that we're dealing with is very sensitive. The bandwidth, because a sensor 1,500 kilometers away, you've got if you get information off because you haven't got a wire, how do you get it off? Do you need a drone? Do you use SATCOMs, but you're in the far north? Blah, blah, blah. So there's a bandwidth issue there. Then there's the carriers. Is it line of sight, etc.? Old-fashioned HF, blah, blah, blah. Then there's having precise positioning information. So how does the UUV know where it is, if it's running on dead reckoning or an estimated position? And then the processing. Where do you take the information that you've got from your sensor, and where do you process it? Do you process it on board? That makes it a very expensive, complicated sensor. And if you lose it, that's a lot of money down the drain. Do you do it back on a mothership, or do you then send it back to some kind of headquarters in the continental North America, or in Europe, or wherever you're doing? So we have a problem then whereby there's not one problem to solve. So you've got the problem of the UUV, you've got a problem of communications, you've got a problem of processing, you've got a problem, actually, one of the biggest problems we have at the moment is launching and recovering the UUVs in anything other than sea state 3 or 4. Whereas in the high Arctic, we probably want to be operating in sea states in excess of 7 or 8. And that's a considerable amount of water churning around, trying to deploy a 10-ton UUV. So there's an interesting chain of problems we're trying to solve at the moment. And I think one of the reasons I'm excited about ConvergX and talking to people like Zubin is the niche technologies at each stage of the system that different partners can contribute to solving the problem. So it's very exciting. The problem is each of the sections of the problem, the technology is not necessarily as mature as we want. So, you know, the TRL, the technology readiness levels, 1 to 9, a lot of them are sitting in between that 6 to 8 point. So then there's still prototypes or still experimenting. We're still figuring out the comms. We're still figuring out the control. Is it AI? Is it something else? You know, and then, you know, in the basics of the physics of getting a sensor on and off a platform, and then how do we deliver that in a commercially winsome way to our customers.
Thanks, Jason. You spoke about operation and technology, and you also talked about volume of data and information and security of that communications. I'd like to address that with you, Ryan, if you wouldn't mind bringing forward the challenges that you've experienced on securing that information, and especially when we take a look at things that I call the IoT 4.0, whatever the new vernacular is of that environment. But what do you see as ways that you can solve some of the challenges that Jason brought forward, which is, how do I secure that information, which means I'm securing that remote asset, which means that it's not going to be a threat, and it will be available for me to utilize as I intended versus someone else's intention?
So great question. So the first aspect is understanding where these assets are. So the problem that we have today is there's so many net new assets being added without a full asset inventory, and having control of that inventory on a day-to-day basis is pretty crucial. So just understanding where these assets are, and then from there, what stage they're at in what we call the maturity of updating the software regarding the security aspect. So ongoing, basically identifying the assets on an ongoing basis, updating them, and then from there, making sure that the connection to those assets, as we know it as a supply chain, that's the biggest issue, is when we're updating the software, is it a true update from the vendor? So that's what we're seeing today, is these sensors are being infiltrated by fake software or through the supply chain of getting to these. So, and the last thing is encryption. Encryption has overhead to everything that you do in the network, so that has to be looked at going forward. So the main aspect is understanding where these assets are and who's got control of them. So that's basically the basic security hygiene.
Terrific. Zubin, when Jason was talking about needing something that can remove and land beyond sea state 3, I know you've probably got some capability or some thoughts on what that should look like. Before you answer that question, can you also add to your answer, which is the things that now need to be considered in building drones of size and scale to accomplish that? Because I'm sure a lot of the things that we see in our mind are those little drones that kids play with, or you're now using small package drones. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that we really understand what a larger heavy lift drone is and should look like. So perhaps Zubin, you can address that for us as well.
Sure. Well, the elusive heavy lift drone that people are chasing right now seems like the technology is way ahead of regulatory. Regulatory doesn't like large vehicles. We would consider that some of these, they look at these larger vehicles that people are building right now as aircraft, not an unmanned drone. As soon as it becomes an aircraft, then you have to go through all of the Industry Canada, Transport Canada, all the licensing in regards to that. So, because right now we can put state-of-the-art sensors and great items on drones, on unmanned systems, and you don't have to have that sensor go through the rigorous qualifications through Transport Canada. That's why we have these great up-to-date sensors that are not 2 years old, because they have to go through those regulatory issues. So right now we're working with a company that's been working in the Arctic. They are a heavy lift drone manufacturer. Their drone carries 800 pounds. It's designed for the rigorous weather. So when you're, most of the commercially available drones today can withstand a 60-kilometer crosswind. But in this case, you will not be able to do that because in the Arctic, you're talking 80 kilometers, 90-kilometer-hour winds, crosswinds. And so you need to be able to sustain flight while landing on moving vehicles, etc. So we have been testing it, and it has been working quite well in 70-kilometer-hour crosswinds. And it's a vertical takeoff drone. It's the only way to do it. I've seen a lot of net landings on ships, that type of thing. But in our case, we can land just like a regular aircraft landing on a ship or on the ice. So that's number one thing. And this is part of it. We're building a drone delivery system for the Arctic to be able to fly autonomous vehicles safely, unmanned, and do medical and supply deliveries to far out islands in the Arctic. We are actually also working with the Arctic Council on bringing deliveries out in Alaska. And so this is a program that we suspect will, I guess, get wings in about 2 years because of regulatory. Again, regulatory has to somehow catch up to the technology. And I just wanted to address one more thing is in reference to sensor data that we just talked about. Jason was mentioning the challenges of moving the data, being able to, and to us, it's processing the data on board your computer that's on your vehicle, being able to do as much processing in the air prior to a download. So you only download relevant points of interest. And of course, in the Arctic, we have the challenge of only using Iridium. You have Iridium Next, which is, it's not bad, but there's no way it's going to be able to transmit enough data. Now, we do have other satellite systems being launched. But again, everyone forgets about the far north. And that's been an issue. And but there are some new SATCOM systems being launched by SpaceX. These are supposed to give global coverage on a fairly high bandwidth. So for us, it's all about processing in the air or underwater. And again, just relevant data.
One of the things that pops into my head when I've been listening to your information so far is we've talked about needing something that's heavy lift, something that's robust, something that's able to withstand a lot of temperature and shifting waves. And Ryan, you're talking about securing that information, securing that asset. I think back to what we're looking at for delivering packages, and we've all seen commercials. We've all seen the way of the vision that we're being fed, which is you now can have remote delivery of packages to your very own home. I'll just open it up to whomever on the panel would like to take on that question, or perhaps provide some comments on. Is that going to be a reality? And when I'm listening to some of the issues and challenges from security, communications, control, and those sorts of things, I'm now envisioning a cluttered airspace around cities. And I'm wondering what the relationship to the work, if you will, of military, security, and Zubin, you were bringing up managing wildfires and ecological issues. I'll just throw it to the panel who would like to take on maybe some comments around what that reality might look like.
I'll chip in first, although the air domain is not my happy place. I'm much happier under the water. What we're seeing in terms of the drone stuff, and we've discussed it already, regulation isn't ready. And I think we're going to have to see a different paradigm of regulation and technology, because regulation starts with safe. And safe in their minds is manned, an operator in the system. What we're trying to do is take the operator out to make the operator more safe, but also deliver a new way of doing business. And I think there's got to be a dialogue, I think, between governments, industry, and the military in order to have an understanding of how we operate in the space, and what does good look like and what does safe look like.
Anyone else? Zubin?
Oh, I was muted, sorry. No, that's really interesting, yes. Safety is a number one thing. But what I want to reiterate here is heavy lift drones, regulatory, they're not working together right now in any way. The problem with that we're seeing in the challenges we're having is, like I said earlier, we're way ahead of the technology. Way ahead of the regulatory. There's a lot of great things that have been built that just cannot be flown. And what we're seeing is the stall. People want to fund these projects. We're working with a couple of companies that are funding projects, and they're at a stall because they cannot go to market. And I think that's a big issue, that there's some great minds. It's kind of like universities producing a great technology, but they never hit market. We're seeing that right now. And it's kind of a horrible thing, because it's a waste of great minds. And that's something that we've seen just recently.
Ryan, I have a question for you. When we talk about industries that exist in the Arctic and also around the world in tough geographic locations, hard to get to, very few people inhabit that particular area, but there's industry that's needed, mining or transportation and logistics, and even just security of the people that are there. What do you think is the most significant challenge we need to overcome? And is it possible to meet that challenge, to provide that safety of assets, that security of utilization of autonomous vehicles in mines, or in Jason's case, underwater, subsurface?
So yeah, I mean, the question really becomes geographically, where is this activity happening? And so in the Arctic, it's very large. So the problem that that everybody has is just fulfilling the maintenance parameters around these projects. The window of opportunity is the window to get this done is very small. So the opportunity to actually complete these projects becomes very stretched out. And the great thing that we've experienced in Canada is we're very good operators. We're actually one of the best operators in the world. So we have the ability to work in these environments and understand all aspects. But as far as security goes, it really going forward, it's supply chain that really is going to be crucial for these areas on how we're going to supply them, what routes are we going to use, what data, how are we going to get the data there in and out. So it boils down to the supply chain of working in these areas.
Jason, your question to you is, you talked earlier about the need to have multiple industries and partners to solve a lot of the issues that we brought forward today on this panel. Communications, the technology, the maturity of what's available, and maybe a partnership in place between military, the private sector, and then perhaps it's another class of opportunity for a business in the future. Can you maybe address what I just provided as a convoluted question, but more around, you talked earlier about needing to be collaborative to deliver an autonomous variety of fronts.
Absolutely. In terms of solving my problems, it has to be a partnership. So we would need to partner with companies like M-Subs in the UK, Cellular in British, over in BC, to provide an XLU UV, powered by innovative technologies such as hydrogen cells, etc. We need then partner with a sensor company, so somebody, for example, like Geospectrum over in Halifax, or one of the big OEMs like Atlas, Thales, etc. We then will need to partner with somebody potentially providing innovative control and security comms, either acoustic comms or drones, to provide that sort of line of sight link over several hundred kilometers back to a mothership. Then we need to partner, although this is where Serco is strongest. We are really good at running ships. We're actually really good at design, building, and operating, maintaining vessels like icebreakers, etc., and running fleets of ships for our customers. We then need to partner with a communications company and a processing company, potentially, to look at the data that we're looking at. We then probably need to partner with a military, because the area we're operating in is the information that we're looking at is of particular interest to national governments. And then we need to partner with regulatory authorities to ensure that the crew is safe, and that we're operating our sensors in a way that doesn't conflict with other activities in the maritime, and making sure that we do it in a clean and environmentally responsible way. And there are other parts of the food chain, the supply chain, that we need to solve. So we would be looking, as we try and unpack this puzzle, looking at all sorts of partners to deliver this, and would be very interested in a conversation if anybody feels that they've got something to add to what is going to be a very exciting future in this space.
Thank you, Jason. Zubin, last question to you. Your whole company and your whole way of doing business is through partnerships. When we take a look at building those pieces of technology, data scientists, data analysts, and then the physical structure of drone, and then the virtual environment in order to control, manage autonomous environments. What do you see as the next chasm that needs to be crossed, or that challenge overall, aside from regulatory, that needs to be met in order to ensure we can deliver practical and affordable remote delivery, all the way through to ensuring that industry and security and military are provided for in a remote and drone environment?
Well, interesting question. Regulatory has always been the issue for us. Technology sharing is amongst partners is something that everyone's got their poker face on. We have issues with, it's something that I think I spent a lot of money on IP lawyers. That's our. I thought these corporate lawyers were expensive. It's my IP lawyers. Trying to decide who owns what IP is the number one challenge. I think that's what holds us. Is right now I'm running a lot of discussions when you have 4 or 5 IP lawyers representing 4 or 5 partners. That's been my challenge, and we're getting through it. But everyone wants to see where the money's going to flow at the end of the day, and whoever owns the IP is the one who has the biggest piece of pie. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a mixture of industry and government. Industry is there to make money, and I'm finding that this is my biggest challenge in the projects that we have.
That wasn't the answer I was expecting from you, Zubin. I thought you were going to say, well, we need this new type of advanced material to be a wing cover for a forward-leading prop so that we can utilize it in high altitude, or deep in Mariana's Trench so we can map the sea bottom. That's what I thought would be your answer. But you're right, cash is king, and knowing who owns what and what to do with it to partner is certainly a challenge for sure. We're getting close to the end of our time, and what I'd like to offer is for each of you to spend a moment or two discussing, take some of the thoughts that we've had on this panel, which I found fairly fascinating, and it was interesting to see that each segment of the marketplace is experiencing similar issues. And again, Jason and Zubin, to your comment about partnering is only where I see is the way to move forward. Regulatory and capital and investment, et cetera, as well. What I'd like is from a security and safety and data perspective, Ryan, we'll start with you for some closing comments.
So the closing comments would be to have security and the software aspect, everybody at the table at the start to have security built into it from the start. So it's really difficult to reverse engineer and a waste of time and so forth. So having that conversation at the start of these projects is probably the most crucial thing. So understanding the security framework and standards to have that built in from the start. So that's.
So not only do you have to get your physical house in order, the digital and virtual world is by far more important, and controlling where those autonomous and remote assets are at all times. Jason, to you?
For me, picking up on something I probably haven't mentioned, first off, in my space, actually, I think across the board, is autonomy is only getting bigger and more capable. And I think in the marine domain, given the challenges that we'll have in a post-COVID environment in terms of defense budgets, my customers' budgets, autonomy offers an opportunity to deliver capability via commercial sources or via national government sources in a much more cost-effective way. And I think it is an area of technology it's worth a lot of interest in investment.
Because I'm moderating and I can ask a follow-on question, Jason, what you talk about military, and then we're also engaged in industry and commercial. I wonder, could a potential partnership that would benefit your company and military budgets around the world is link it to an industrial or a commercial opportunity? So we bring in the need to manufacture, create, deliver secure food and security of nations, and align that with businesses, with industrial businesses and military, align those together. Do you think if we got a little closer, that may open up some technology innovation and some support?
I think, what we're seeing, and going back to the regulatory thing, is we need to do business differently. And I don't think we understand yet what that different looks like. We haven't comprehended or don't understand the technology enough, but don't really understand what does good look like going forward. And I think we need some good minds, like my fellow panel colleagues, really worrying that and helping our customers understand what can be achieved, and also what are the hurdles such as regulation and the strategic imagination of our customers in order to deliver that.
Excellent. Zubin, closing comments?
Well, I really just want to tell you what we feel we want to do in the next coming years. We talked about data, security, right? And then there's environmental and human life, right? We're chasing the big data ourselves. And we're building these big heavy lift drones for to carry, we'll say, a flying lab, right? To be able to be autonomous on its own, be like a kid kind of leaving home and saying, I'll call you when I need you. Because the idea of autonomous to us is this is going to be something that's going to leave and only call home when you need it and have some help. Otherwise, they're going to process data, communicate on its own with small amounts of data that it needs over narrow bandwidth, and come back a couple of years later with all the information that you need, all the big data. And really that's what we're trying to do. That's my plan for the future. The other, of course, is the standard delivering drugs, necessities to remote villages. Yes, absolutely. But the real challenge is the long range autonomous flight. And that's what we're looking to do.
Thanks, Zubin. Just a couple of notes that I take is, when you look at autonomous, it's not necessarily about a drone, whether it's a space, air, land, or subsurface. It's more about what the technology maturity is to make it all work, as well as the need for software to be developed, data communication systems that need to be deployed globally in order to enjoy the advancements of this type of technology. It certainly doesn't sound to me like we're replacing anything. We're just enhancing the capability that we need as a people and manage from our environmental concerns through to our development and our industrial concerns. And then, of course, safety and security, which encompasses the military aspect as well. So very much a blend of all those industries together to create that common solution. How can we operate more effectively and efficiently in areas that may not have been enjoying the technology or the quality of life that we have at the moment as well? Well, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you, Ryan and Jason and Zubin and Kim, for participating and being here on this panel today on technology innovation, specifically around autonomous in the Arctic. But to me, if it's a solution that we can solve in the Arctic, we can certainly solve that problem elsewhere. And even maybe someday when we're looking at autonomous vehicles mining in the Arctic or in the deserts, we can also look to what we can mine on asteroids, which is, to me, the definitive example of autonomous and remote operations and getting people away from dull, dirty, and dangerous. I'm excited to participate on this panel with you. I thank each and every one of you for your contribution. And I'm also excited that we get to participate and present this at Farnborough Connect with their virtual air show that has begun this week. So I thank you all and appreciate your comments and participating today. And Kim, if you wouldn't mind, I'll return the virtual microphone to you for last and final comments. And again, thank you very much, Ryan, Jason, and Zubin, for your time.
No worries, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brad. What a fantastic discussion. A couple key points that I personally took away were that, of course, regulatory has not caught up to the technology. So it's something that we definitely need to work on. And another point was that cross-industry collaboration is extremely important to help increase the speed and efficiency of a project or contract. I would like to thank our panelists again, Ryan Sutton from Verve, Jason Reid from Serco Canada Marine, and Zubin Kothawala from Skymount. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to chat with us. I would also like to thank our moderator, Brad Robson, for doing such a fantastic job and asking such interesting questions. Finally, I would like to thank all of you who have tuned into this session. Should you have any questions should you have any questions or wanting to follow up with any of our panelists, feel free to reach out to us here at ConvergX at